For my digital field report, I chose the Temple of Israel, located off Spring Forest Road just outside downtown Greenville. This particular location has been serving the upstate Jewish community since 1989. This church began in 1913 when 6 Jewish families in Greenville began meeting regularly for observance in their own homes. Service was held in different houses or public halls as their membership grew until the dedication of their first temple in 1929. The church now claims 190 different families from across the upstate. At their current location, the church offers weekly Shabbat services, women's and men worship clubs, youth groups, and religious school. They also organize large-scale community events such as the Music on Sundays concert series and Shalom Fest, an annual Jewish food and cultural festival held each spring. The church practices a form of Judaism known as Reform Judaism. This denomination attempts to tie Jewish tradition with progressive ideals, particularly in regard to diversity and equality. They interpret the Torah as a living document whose values and teachings can apply to modern challenges. Reformed Jews allow participation from Jewish converts, paternally descended Jews, interfaith families, and is committed to the equality of women and marginalized groups, including the full participation of LGBTQ individuals in both synagogue life as well as society at large. In regard to gender, women are overrepresented in the congregation compared to society at large. At the service I attended, of the 38 attendees present, 20 were women. Though both their former and incoming rabbis are men, the service was led by a female choir director in lieu of their traditional rabbi-led service. Of the 8 choir members, 2 were men. Women were also equally overrepresented among staff as well as on the board of directors and among officer positions in the church. As for race, there is very little racial diversity among the congregation. In fact, during the Shabbat service I attended, there was not a single non-white congregant among the group. While embracing the diversity of human life and fighting for equal protection for such groups is a core tenet of Reform Judaism, it appears that recreating the demographic makeup of society at large within their church is not a high priority for the congregation. One explanation I can give is their claim that they rarely proselytize to the greater Greenville community. New congregants tend to find the church through relation with current active members, which are predominantly white, thus replicating the demographics already present in the church. This also helps explain why the church accepts Jews by choice, but only possesses active converts who did so as a result of marriage into a Jewish family. In discussing the service, I have to begin by reiterating that the Shabbat I attended was slightly non-traditional, as their longtime rabbi had just moved to the Midwest and they were still awaiting the arrival of their new rabbi from New England area. The service was led by the choir director, who led the congregation through a worship service centered around meditations, chants, hymns, and sung prayer, featuring a mix of traditional and contemporary compositions both in English and in Hebrew. I was able to follow along with the service by using the provided Siddur, their traditional book of hymns and prayers, which you can see in the top left. According to the choir director, this prayer book was revised in 1994 to include more gender-neutral terminology, which I found particularly interesting. The congregants actually expressed to me my luck in attending a rabbi-less service for my class, as the choir director, in lieu of delivering a traditional sermon, explained the history and religious significance of each hymn and prayer prior to leading the congregation through them. Here I would like to feature a few videos I was able to capture of the different types of hymns and prayers featured in the service. The first shows a contemporary worship song in English. The next video depicts a more traditional hymn sung in Hebrew. This final video depicts the sing-song recitation of prayers, including participation from the rest of the congregation. At the end of the service, I was able to observe the Kaddish, the sanctification of the Shabbat through a blessing over wine and bread. This particular congregation has the children of the church come up front and participate in the Kaddish in place of everyone else. There is participation from the attendees, but I would not call it emotional. The way they worship is steeped in ritual and tradition, with each congregant being aware of when in the prayer to recite along, when to face the Torah, when to bow, and when to sit. Outside of these moments of participation, congregants remain silent throughout the service. While the congregation claims upwards of 190 families, only about 40 people attended service when I was present. When I asked if this was abnormal due to the absence of their rabbi, the choir members expressed that this reflects the typical turnout they do receive. Of the 38 attendees counted, all were white, 20 were female, approximately 17 appeared to be aged 50 or above, while only 5 individuals under 20 seemed to be present. One thing that really hit home for me was the church's open discussion during service of the recent uprise of fascist ideology in the United States. They openly discussed the legacy of anti-Semitism across the world, as well as the Holocaust, refusing to shy away from remembering their faith's long battle with discrimination and hatred. They showed particular concern for the public resurgence of anti-Semitism in the West, urging congregants to be hyper-aware when out in the world wearing obvious identifying markers of Jewish faith. My overall experience was extremely welcoming. When I first entered the temple, I approached a random member standing outside the worship hall and reiterated that I was an outside observer and wanted to make sure it was okay that I attended their Shabbat service. She was very friendly, replying, "Well, I have no idea why not. Please go find a seat." In the small congregation of family units, I clearly stuck out as a stranger, but after service was over, 3 separate people approached me to introduce themselves and ask how I came to the church. Even after I explained to them that I was attending for a class, several of the choir members took me on a tour of their worship space, showing me their Torahs, the Kaddish altar, their memorializing wall, and walking me through deeper explanations of the rituals I observed during the service. From my experience this visit, I can say with relative certainty that I would feel very comfortable as a member of this congregation. They are very open and progressive, and their values match much of my own. As a queer woman raised in a Southern Baptist congregation in the Bible Belt, I never felt organized religion had a place for people like me. But learning about Reform Judaism has encouraged me to be more open to understanding the beliefs of other religions I'm unfamiliar with and could hold a bias against. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this video.